Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of the D103 Senior Advisor Webinar Series. I'm Cassandra Lee, the facilitator for the program. This is an opportunity in the D103 Senior Advisor Webinar Series for me to bring to our club members, our club leaders, and district leaders various topics that can assist them in their growth as communicators, public speakers, as well as leaders. Today, the topic that we have that will be provided via a panel is actually a topic that's more so for leadership development. As all of you know, as a Toastmaster, we strive to achieve various goals, goals that are for our public speaking or for our communication or even for our leadership skills. That means that sometimes we have to do various speech projects and or leadership projects. One of the leadership projects that we can do, not that we're required to do it, yet that we can do, is something called the Youth Leadership Program. The Youth Leadership Program will be a requirement or one of the requirements for anyone who is looking to become a distinguished Toastmaster. A DTM, having that DTM behind your name basically means you've completed multiple projects, both in the speaking as well as in the leading categories. Today, youth leadership is our focus, and what you're going to learn will be information about the youth leadership program in general, yet you really are going to learn more firsthand information about coordinating. Did I say that correctly? Yes, coordinating a youth leadership program. And what I mean by coordinating is the fact that you can serve as the individual in charge of a youth leadership program. Today, what I've done is provided a panel. I decided, why not learn from those who are in charge of the overall youth leadership program for District 103 Toastmasters, than to take this moment and to find that out. So we're taking this moment now to find out from three of the youth leadership program chairpersons of District 103 Toastmasters. We have our very first youth leadership program coordinator, or I should say, our very first youth leadership program chairperson. She had the ability to serve youth, the least, tongue tied here. She had the opportunity to actually serve. And I'm excited because I'm thinking back in my mind. My mind is having all of these memories flooding me because I can remember when I first approached her to be the youth leadership chair. Then she approached me about several ideas that she wanted to have executed for the program. And that was in the very first year of District 103 Toastmasters. That means I am going back to 2017. In 2017, 2018, as well as 2018, 2019, our very first youth leadership program chairperson was Peggy White. Peggy is a distinguished Toastmaster, and she is someone who is involved with the youth. She has her very own foundation that she started in honor of her dad. I don't know if any of you realize that Peggy is the daughter of the legendary golfer Theodore Ted Rhodes. And she has formed a foundation called the Ted Rhodes Foundation, where she actually is focused on helping to keep her father's legacy alive. Now, when she was a part of District 103 and serving as the chairperson for the youth leadership program, it wasn't really about golf. However, it was a common connection to what she's doing with her golf foundation. And that is to make certain she's helping to develop youth. Peggy will bring to the conversation today her perspective on how you can serve as a youth leadership coordinator, some of the best practices that you will find that will be helpful. And of course, she's simply going to give you some insight on how we started to use the youth leadership program in the first 2 years of District 103. That's our first panelist. So everyone, do what I'm about to do right now with a reaction icon. Give a round of applause, a thumbs up, a celebration icon, whichever icon you would like to use. Welcome Peggy to the panel. She's our first panelist. Now, she's not the only panelist though. Our second panelist for today is our second youth leadership program chairperson, and that is Ray Willis. Ray Willis had the opportunity to serve in the year of 2019-2020. Ray is a member of Toastmasters where he belongs to multiple clubs. He is someone who used to work at the, and let me get this tongue full of information correct, he used to work for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, where he managed over $1 billion budgets. That's actually where he retired from back in 2018, and where he was the director of community planning and development here in Chicago. As I mentioned, Ray Willis was our second District 103 Youth Leadership Program chairperson, and he, as well as Peggy, will provide their perspective, some best practices, in addition to giving you some insight into programs that were done under his leadership with the Youth Leadership Program. Our final panelist today is someone that all of you know, and I shouldn't say all of you know. Many of you may not know him, or some of you will. Anyhow, Ivory Gwen. Ivory Gwen, does that name sound familiar? Ivory Gwen is someone who has been around for years with Toastmasters. I say he's been around almost as long as I have. Yet Ivory has been someone who's been involved in leadership at the club and district level. I mentioned some of you might know him simply because you may have known him from his time serving as logistics manager, or even as conference chairs and program quality director. And eventually he served twice as a district director. As a matter of fact, Ivory is the only person that I know who has served as district director in 2 different districts. Yay! Now, Ivory is also someone that I know who has found a way to bring in youth. If you were on the call earlier, or if you got into the session before we got started, you would have heard Ivory talking about youth. He and Peggy and Ray are all about the youth. And what you will find is Ivory is going to tell you information today about youth leadership programs that have been done under his leadership as the youth leadership chair. He's also going to share with you from his chairperson perspective some of the best practices you can use, some of the different examples of programs that were done, and also Ivory is going to share with you upcoming youth leadership program coordinator opportunities. That means we will be reaching out to you or looking toward you to potentially lead some of those sessions. And again, you will hear that from Ivory a little later in the session. For now, everyone, and I don't think I did this after I mentioned Ray, and I know I didn't do this after I mentioned Ivory, yet I would like for you to make certain that you, along with me, provide them with a welcome to the panel. Therefore, use whichever reaction icon you would prefer to welcome them to our panel for today. The celebrate, or they call it ta-da, I call it celebrate. Feel free to use those reaction icons. Thank you. Awesome. Well, with our panelists being introduced, it is now time for you to hear from them. We will give them an opportunity to share information, and then we're also going to hear from you from time to time as well. If you have any questions that come up, feel free to put them inside of the chat box. Of course, there will be an opportunity for the panelists to answer your questions directly. That means you will also be able to speak by microphone, in addition to putting your statements and comments and questions in the chat box. Therefore, as I would say, don't wait for us to find out if you have a question. If the questions are in your mind, go ahead and put them inside of the chat box, and I'll be sure to relay those questions to them. And of course, we will answer them in various segments of our panel for today. Again, welcome everyone, and thank you to our panelists. This round of applause is from me to you for agreeing to be spotlighted today. Peggy, let me start with you. Let everyone know what club or clubs that you belong to and how long you've been a member of Toastmasters International.
Oh, okay. Let me see. I'm a member of Christ Universal Temple Club number 1, a chartered member since 2014. I am currently serving as the president.
Nice, thank you. And Ray, why don't you go ahead and do the same? Tell everyone which club or clubs you belong to and how
Thank you.
long you've been a member.
I've been a member for 9 years and a member of Bow Literary Talkers. That's my home club, if I would refer to it as that. And I was a sponsor of the HUD, Housing and Urban Development Club, about 3 years ago. And Norris Roberts was extremely instrumental in assisting me in terms of getting that club started off the ground.
Yay! Shout out to Norris again. Thank you, Ray, for sharing which clubs and how long you've been a part of Toastmasters. All right, Ivory, your turn. Which clubs or clubs and how long have you been a member?
I'm a member of AT&T West East, a member of Talk of the Town, and the Southwest anchor of the district, Broadview Toastmasters. And I've been Toastmasters since 2003, I think, or maybe 3. I can't remember, it's been so long.
Right, so long, and you've done so much. And as each of you have mentioned, though, you have been around for a moment in time where you've been dedicated to one or more clubs. And what you've actually experienced is, of course, the Toastmaster program from the standpoint of being a member for what the program offers to us. However, let me find out from you your perspective on this question. And any one of you can answer this question. What benefit do you think the youth leadership program provides to participants that are 18 or below 18 years? Because we know in order to be a member of Toastmasters, we need to be 18 or more, right? So at least 18 years old. The youth leadership program is for those that are below the age of 18. What benefits do you believe the youth leadership program provides youth? And as I said, any one of you can answer that question first.
Okay, I'll start out. It provides them an opportunity to overcome their nervousness, to acquire leadership skills and be better communicators, be able to interact with their friends as well as adults, and just a variety of things. But those are a few off the top of my head that I can think of that I feel that participants can receive as a result of the program.
I love that. And I like how you brought in the friends. So it's not just school or only parents, but it's across the nation. Yeah. Ray, go ahead.
Yes, I will add to what Peggy just said by saying that it introduces leadership and leadership skill development for some the first time, particularly in terms of how do you run a meeting? What are the methods that you use to run a meeting? Although this is a Toastmasters meeting, but the way you run Toastmasters meeting is identical to other meetings in terms of nonprofit organizations or just meetings in general. So I think it gave them an orientation or a brief introduction to organizing and also managing and running an effective meeting.
Yeah, that's a nice perspective. And I like when you brought up the fact of leadership, because that is very true. Youth leadership program isn't only focused on public speaking for the youth. It's also focused on developing them as a leader as well. So yes, that's good. And thanks, Jerry, for adding in the chat box there. I like when you said the importance of conversation and interacting. That is so true. That's exactly tying into what Peggy had mentioned there. So I like that you touched on that. And Sheila, thanks for putting in, it gives a sense of empowerment, right? That sense of empowerment ties into what Ray was mentioning also. Good. Ivory, it looks as if you have something also that you want to share there.
Yeah, I'm going to take both of those and put them together because it started out with how do you ask for something? And you have to have a voice. I remember as a child, when I was looking for a summer job, one of your friends would say, hey, Ivory, go over there and talk to him and he will give you a job. Well, and when they asked me, okay, why are you going to work here? My mom told me to come over here. One thing I want to give the kids the power to think on their feet. When the guy asks him a question about the job, to be able to give a effective, be able to communicate effectively about the job. Because a lot of kids don't know how to interview. And this is table topics. They're introduced to table topics, and you should see their faces when somebody asks them a question, and they build up from that. They keep building from that. By the end of the program, they're answering, going right to the question and doing what they need to do.
Yes, that is so true. Thank you for bringing up the interviewing. Thank you for bringing up them being able to ask for something. And I really appreciate how you gave the example of you, for instance, when you wanted a job and you realized in order to get the job, you had to be able to ask for it. And that's exactly what the youth leadership program can provide to our young people, similar to what the entire Toastmasters program brings to us as well. Good. Yeah.
Hello,
Sharon.
Cassandra.
Yes.
Cassandra, this is Dr. Tony T. I'm
Hi, Dr.
having
T.
a problem getting on Zoom. I tried to get on Zoom with Greg's code.
Well,
It
Dr.
won't
T,
work.
let's say that you're already here. No longer a problem because you're already in the room. You are in the room, sir. We can hear you. And that's you by telephone?
Yeah, but I don't like to be by phone.
Well, in this
Well,
moment, you have to be. At this moment, you
What's
have to.
wrong with his what's wrong with his Zoom thing? Every time I click it, it won't come on.
Well, here's the situation, Dr. T. In this moment, I cannot troubleshoot that for you because we are in the middle of our
Send it to him,
program.
Andrew.
You'll
I can
send it
send
to
him a
him?
link.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Thanks
Yes,
so
ma'am.
much, Greg.
All
Thank
Send me
you.
another link, please.
I
Send me
got
a
you,
link.
Dr. T. I'll send it.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. And speaking of links, I'm glad. Thank you, Mr. PQD, for sending that link out. What I did a moment ago, everyone, is that I put two separate links inside of the chat box for you. Peggy and Ray and Ivory shared some key information on what they believe to be the benefits youth would receive from the Youth Leadership Program. I put two different links in the chat box for you to simply provide you with the general information about the Toastmasters International Youth Leadership Program. With the two different links, it'll basically reiterate the basic details that the Youth Leadership Program typically is held for about 25 students. It gives them the opportunity to learn public speaking skills and some other key information there. So feel free to click those links and gather some more insight on the program in general. And I wanted to make certain that you knew it was there. Speaking of it's there, Sharon Giles, thank you so much for putting your comment in the chat box where you say that it allows them an opportunity to learn who they are. Wow, yeah, it helps them to learn who they are. They build their self-worth. Then they will be able to reach out to others leading and teaching. Yes, that is so cool. Thank you so much for that, Sharon, because we have to remember, everyone, the youth leadership program is for individuals that could be as young as 12 years old. I think, Ivory, didn't we do a program this summer where our youngest participant was 12, which meant he wasn't even yet in high school, but his parent wanted him to start learning how to speak, which means he learned that skill, but he was also finding out his self-worth. He found his voice. And we could tell that in many of the speeches that he shared. So good.
Yes. He was very good at it.
He was absolutely. All right, so here's a question then I have for the three of you. As I mentioned before, each of you have shared that you've been around, you've been involved, you have dedicated your time and your energy and your effort to various Toastmaster clubs. Yet what influenced you or inspired you to take on the leadership role of being a youth leadership program chair? Ray, let me start with you first. What inspired you to be the youth leadership chair when you were asked? Because this is an appointed position. So I know you can't really apply for it. The district director typically appoints you. Yet when the district director asked, you could have said no. Yet you decided to say yes. Ray, how about for you? What inspired you to actually say yes to the position?
Well, I would start by saying that I have to give all honor to Peggy White. She was the one that basically introduced me to the youth leadership program. I was going down a completely different path, the Gavel Club. And she pulled my coat and explained to me the differences. And when she talked about what youth leadership was all about, I was actually sold that that was the correct, not correct, but the most appropriate way to go. As I began to pursue that, I began to call in not my chips, but to prey upon those that I had relationships in my previous professional role, and fortunately was able to cash in on a couple of projects in terms of Whitney Young over at the Whitney Young High School, knowing the principal and some of the staff over there, and also the MAPS Corps, which is a non-for-profit organization located here in Hyde Park that does work with youth around the city, both south and west sides of Chicago, and was able to tap into some folk there that knew me. And they said, look, this is a program that we should have. And we went from there and developed a program and started it back in 2019 and ended it in, I think it was December of 2019. So that was my early on experience. And I think it is a fantastic program. I try to keep, in fact, I do keep the youth leadership program in my hip pocket. So everywhere I go, where there's an opportunity, I am very quick to pull out my youth leadership gun and fire it at will. And whoever will listen to me, I'm able to talk about the youth leadership program. It works, just like Toastmasters in general, it works for our youth.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that you brought up Peggy, because Peggy, I'm interested in knowing what influenced you. Now, I know I reached out to you initially and said, hey, we're making the attempt to bring this program into District 103. We're a brand new district, not sure exactly how much we'll be able to get done with it. You said, Cassandra, let me think about it. Yet what made you decide, even after you thought about it, what made you decide, Peggy, that you would take on the role and even stay with the role and into the next district year? Go ahead and give us some insight on that.
All right, be happy to. Well, first of all, my past experience in working with young people is one of the things that inspired me for youth leadership role. Having been a Sunday school superintendent at Christ Universal Temple for over 30 years, I worked with the 3-year-olds through 8th graders. And what I found is my 8th graders needed so much help in terms of their communication skills. I couldn't understand half the stuff they were talking about. They could understand each other, but I couldn't understand them. So being in Toastmasters, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to involve them in the youth leadership program. And from that, and also working with my golf foundation, I work with young people who play golf, but they also need to know how to communicate effectively. So between the two, I just get really excited about working with young people. And I tell people all the time when I've done the workshops, if you don't like working with young people, if you don't have the passion, then this is not the program for you.
Yeah, you brought something that's a very good point, Peggy. And I remember you brought that point up before. I remember back in 2017, that was one of the things that you mentioned when you said, hey, Cassandra, we have to start telling our members about this youth leadership program. Is there a way for me to do some type of training on this? And I think it wasn't until like January of that club year that we were able to bring you in for a workshop at the TLI. It was the winter TLI over at Morton College. And you did a workshop there. And one of the things that you said was a key takeaway was the fact that people need to have a passion for working with youth. If they don't have a passion for working with youth, then the youth leadership program may not be the best thing for them. And do you think that still is the case, Peggy, that they need to have the passion?
Oh, yes, because our young people feel so neglected these days. Their parents are working, they don't have time for them. This gives them an opportunity to interact with each other and also to make them feel pretty important, because to be able to stand up and give a speech and not be nervous among their peers is something I think really exciting and something we should continue to do so that we can give our young people some opportunities early on as opposed to when they get older. And, you know, the age group I think is very appropriate.
Oh, good. Thank you for sharing that. And remember, everyone, as Peggy said, it's the passion. It's the passion for the youth. I think Ivory made the comment and he said, oh, we have to do something for our youth. We have to do something with our youth, meaning we have to care about our youth. And speaking of Ivory, I'm curious to know what influenced you to take on the role of being the youth leadership program chair when you were asked by our current district director, Joe McCarty. What influenced you?
Well, there's a lot of things. I remember traveling way far south with Peggy and Ray to this program at a library. I've been to that library before, and it was, and then that was the start of it. And then Ray took me along to the libraries, to some of the schools, and then I start seeing the kids, and I'm there at the beginning, and I'm noticing how they were kind of shy and don't want to talk. And then when I go back, they're totally different people. They're up there talking, their parents are so proud. And just the idea of them, this is changing the way they feel about themselves, that they have a voice is amazing to me. And what influenced me was just the idea of watching other people. And I just appointed Ray as and Peggy both as co-chairs. And as the COVID hit, the kids were neglected. The schools were shut down. I was like, what are we gonna do? And then all of a sudden, you've seen it. You've seen the kids out in the street just doing what they do. And it upset me so much. I said, we gotta get these kids something to do. And so I asked the district director that can I be his youth leadership chair this year? And he said yes. And from then I started working with bringing people along. You have to bring people along with you. And I brought Ray, I brought Deshaun, I brought everybody. Cassandra came along with me because we took a class this summer. It was very interesting. And that's you bring everybody along so that the work is not that heavy.
Wow. And thank you for talking about the idea of bringing people along and having people on the team. And you shared a tidbit of information that I didn't realize. And that was you asked to be the youth leadership coordinator. You are a youth leadership chair, I should say. You asked to be the YLP chair, as opposed to the district director reaching out to you and tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, can you be the youth leadership program chair? You asked instead. And look at that. And it was a great thing that you saw yourself being able to do the role, because again, going back to something Peggy said, the passion for wanting to make certain our youth has something constructive to do with their time and their talents. So thank you, Ivory, so much for sharing. And thank you all for sharing what influenced you and what inspired you to serve as the youth leadership program chair for District 103 Toastmasters. Everyone, give them a round of applause for sharing that. I like that. Yay. I'm looking here in the chat box. Thanks, Norris. I see Norris is saying the YLP is also a tremendous alternative to negative activities and or the streets. Yep. Plus, many youth have become active in politics. That's very true. And that issues that impact their lives, that is very true. That is very true, Norris. As a matter of fact, I think the last youth leadership program, or I should say the youth leadership program for the Alpha Quest group, we definitely heard some of the activism. As a matter of fact, the program Ivory and I did back in July, we heard activism in the youth. It came out in their speeches and their passion for wanting to do things right and making the world a better place. And Norris, you're right. Youth Leadership Program gives them the platform to recognize that, as well as to start building their skills in speaking, because one day they will actually be able to do that. As a matter of fact, I remember telling Angelina was her name, right, Ivory? Angelina, I told her, I said, I might forget your name. I won't ever forget your face, because I see you one day being on my television set, because you are out there speaking for the community about how something isn't right and how you want things to be made right. She was like, oh, thank you so much. She was so amazed that I could see that in her. And I told her, I might not remember your name, but I can see you 5, 10, maybe even 12 years from now being on Channel 7, Channel 5, or some news like Good Morning America. And she just chuckled, but her passion was there. And I think the passion that we have for wanting to make certain that our youth have something constructive to do is really spilling over year after year after year, starting with the people that have been appointed as our youth leadership program chairs. So I say, Peggy and Ray and Ivory, this reaction icon is for you. And everyone, you can give them a reaction icon that you prefer as well. Now, here's what I am getting ready to share with everyone, just in case you missed the link before. We've talked a little bit about the Youth Leadership Program, what it is and what it does. I am going to make certain that I provide inside of the chat box for you, again, one of those primary links. And then I'm also going to mention to you briefly some of the key highlights from one of those pages. Of course, the link that I provided to you is from Toastmasters International. It is from their website, and it lets you know that the Youth Leadership Program is, in essence, a series of workshops. 8 workshops. Whether it's 1 hour or 2 hours, there are 8 workshops. Each of the workshops are designed to engage youth ages, or under the age, I should say, under the age of 18. Because again, we sometimes say it should be ages 15 through 18, but sometimes it could be as young as 12 or 10 or 8. It simply depends upon who the sponsoring organization is. Therefore, again, it enables young people under the age of 18 to develop their communication and their leadership skills. We've already heard that the youth can find their voice, the youth can establish their leadership abilities, yet the program is going to provide them, over the course of the 8 workshops, very in-depth training on evaluation, preparing and giving speeches, doing table topics, which is in essence impromptu speaking, being able to understand more about how they use their voice, their vocabulary, and their gestures, and most importantly, teaching them how to give positive feedback. It says here giving constructive feedback, but I like to switch that to positive feedback. Now, of course, the program is going to get the youth from a variety of places. You may find you are involved in a church and they need to have a program. So the church is providing the youth group. A lot of times though, it's schools. So schools or after school programs are providing the youth. You will hear from from all of our chair people today in a moment, the type of groups that came to the district, or the type of sponsoring groups that provided the youth. And that will give you a perspective on if your group that you're thinking about can actually provide a youth leadership program. And again, it's simply the structure for the youth. One other point that I'm mentioning here from the Toastmasters International website is that everything regarding those 8 workshops are all included inside of a workbook. There's a workbook for the coordinator, there's a workbook for the youth, which means nothing is being made up. The curriculum you don't have to create. Thanks, Ivory, for showing it. Yes, the curriculum you don't have to create. The curriculum is already there. What we found with the curriculum is there's some room for flexibility, some room to adapt the agenda based on the group. Yet for the most part, what you do in session 1 through session 8 is all laid out for you. The students get that version in their workbook, and you as the coordinator receive it in yours, and everything is laid out for everyone. So the great thing about the youth leadership program is that it is very similar to everything we do in Toastmasters. If you want to know how to do it, read the manual on it. Or I should say, now that we have pathways, if you want to know how to do it, read everything in pathways and figure it out, right? Yet the idea is still the same. Whatever you need to know, it's there for you. So let me find out now from our panelists, because I mentioned as I was going through the brief description from Toastmasters International that the youth are provided by a sponsoring organization. I'm curious to know, Peggy, from your experience, when you served in that first year, where did which youth leadership programs were done? Who served as coordinators? Can you give us some examples of the type of youth leadership programs that were done in your year?
Well, several of the programs that I did in my year was with community organizations. Well, one was with a community organization, which was very interesting because these were young people who were from urban areas. They were very shy, did not want to speak or talk, and had to bring in one of my fellow Toastmasters, Sid Brown, to work with me because they were more receptive to him than they were with me, because I felt like I was teaching a class. I had to maintain order and keep them quiet and just get them excited about the program. Once they became excited about the program, then we moved forward. But prior to that, it was a little challenging. Then the next program I worked at, and I think I have Tiffany is on the call. She worked with me at Hales Franciscan with about 20 young men. And that was indeed a challenge. Tiffany, can you give us some insight on that?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I participated in the Hales Franciscan Youth Leadership Program, and it was a lot of fun. It was very spirited working with the young men. The school was actually in a restructure mode, so there were probably only about maybe 30 kids at the school at that point. And so we had roughly about 15 that were in our program, and we did the 8-week program with the students. And the challenge was, many of them wanted to go home at the end of the day. And so we had to do some coaching in terms of, come on in, we're going to have a great time, and the school leadership helped us a bit in terms of making it mandatory for the students to participate in the session. But we broke it out. So it was my mom, myself, and Thaddeus Gray. We kind of broke it out. So we had different aspects of the agenda. And then we leveraged the students to do the speeches, run the meetings, and they really got the swing of it, though. It was all, young men between, I would say, freshmen. Well, they were all freshmen and sophomores primarily. And so we talked to them about the benefits of them staying, even though they want to go home, but the benefits related to college, the workforce, the tips that they will get that they can leverage in the future. And I think that's what actually helped us in terms of being successful. So we successfully completed that program, and each student had the ability to speak at some point during that program. And that was one of the things that we were very adamant about, is making sure that we gave them that opportunity to speak in some form or fashion. So then that way they got comfortable. And it was a little scary for them, especially with their peers, because they didn't want, people talking about them. So some were more confident than others. And for those that were not as confident, I think they learned by seeing the other people participate that, oh, this is actually kind of cool. And then they, giving themselves the feedback. That piece was also very good. So it was a very enjoyable experience for me. And I think the school staff was very appreciative as well, especially since they were developing these young men. They were regrowing, restructuring and regrowing the school. Like, our timing was perfect.
Also, too, just to add to that group, it was really funny because we had to keep them off the phone. We had to keep them from falling asleep. We had to do everything but stand on top of the tables to keep their attention. But it was exciting for us because we both enjoy working with young people. And I forgot to introduce my daughter. She is a distinguished Toastmaster, a member of Christ Universal Temple Club #1, and she works with young people on her job and as in her entrepreneurship profession.
And I think that helped too. I think even though I guess I'm aging out of the young adult group, but having a younger person that they could identify with, I think that actually helped us in terms of, even discipline, them being engaged and involved. So you have to be very particular about the people that you select to participate in the program, because it has to be people that connect well with the youth. And so it doesn't matter how old they are, but it definitely should be indicative of people that maybe they have something in Franciscan, and they could see that I had a lot of energy and passion about this. So I think they bought into it because I was so excited about it.
Nice. Peggy and Tiffany, I appreciate both of you sharing that Hell's Franciscan experience. I also appreciate, Peggy, that you shared a variety of different type of programs that happen. Something that I picked up on, Peggy, that you mentioned from each of those examples is the fact that you brought in other people to assist you. And Tiffany, you reiterated being able to have someone who can connect with the youth. And I like when you said, it doesn't matter how old they are, it simply matters that they are able to connect with the youth. And I think that is really, really key. Thank you both for sharing that. I'm providing this round of applause for each of you for that. Good. Thanks, Nakia. I like how you say former school teacher in me is loving this whole concept. Good. Thank you. I'm glad. Well, Nakia, if you were loving that from both Peggy and Tiffany, let me bring up Ray, because Ray already mentioned two of the programs that he dealt with, and he called one of them MAPS Corps and the other one was Whitney Young. Ray, can you give us some more insight on those two examples? And if there were other examples of youth leadership programs that were conducted under your term, give us some ideas about those as well.
Thank you, Cassandra. Yes, MAPS Corps, everybody can figure out what Whitney Young High School is. But MAPS Corps, M-A-P-S, meaningful, active, productive science in service to communities. That's a nonprofit organization birthed here in Hyde Park, University of Chicago. Basically what they do through grants from various places, including the city government of Chicago, they bring on youth and they train these youth to go out and do data collection of neighborhood assets. And then they bring that data back and then eventually have a grand presentation down in the loop for one of the major sponsors of the MAPS Corps program. So when I approached MAPS Corps, didn't know what I was getting into, but that's what I found. And it was an ideal program for them because one of the evaluation items that they received feedback on was that when they gave presentations, they had poor presentations, or I shouldn't say poor, but there was a need and a tremendous need for improving their presentation skills. What better resource than Toastmasters vis-a-vis the youth leadership program? So it was a godsend because I walked into their door and they didn't seek me out, but I walked into their door. And we started and we had about 9 or 10 youth. We met at AT&T. Ivory was very gracious enough to provide the space, ample space, beautiful space, water, sometimes a candy bar or two, or maybe a package of chips. So you'd have to argue with the wrappers as they unwrapped the paper. It was noisy a little bit, but we got through that. But that was what happened at the MAPS Corps. And basically, I'm hoping, as I have continued to keep in touch with them, that they will see fit, they have an interest in continuing a relationship with Toastmasters. And that's the beauty of that I have found of working with organizations, that if you create a good solid foundation, you have opportunities to come back and do another cohort, another cohort, another cohort. And that's what I'm looking forward to, not only at MAPS Corps, but also Whitney Young High School. They have a public speaking club there. Once again, what better avenue to tap than Toastmasters? So it was ideal for them to use the youth leadership program to be able to help to train and to polish and enhance the skills that their public speaking club had, and it worked out just beautiful. So we're hoping to do another repeat there, another cohort there. But again, the pandemic has put a lot of things, I don't want to say on hold, but it's had to cause us to think in some different ways about how we make the presentations. But I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. You know what, Ray? Let me make certain that I find. I'm going to give you this reaction icon. The reason I'm providing you with that reaction icon, Ray, is because I am appreciating you saying, MAPS Corps, they didn't seek us out. I went and sought them out. Although I didn't know exactly what I was getting into when I sought them out, I, though, at least knew Toastmasters had something to offer and we could offer it to this organization, and they received it. So thank you so much for giving us some backstory on MAPS Corps, exactly what it is and what they did, and for running us through some of the experience that you had with that group. And I think that you're right. With Whitney Young as well as MAPS Corps, it would be good that we can continue doing the program, or as you call them, the cohorts with them. So one group after the next group after the next group. So every time an 8-week session ends, each of those organizations are geared up and ready to do another 8-week session and another 8-week session, and so on and so forth. So thank you so much for getting that process started, because at least the interest is there. The interest is there. We'll simply see what we can bring forth from those two groups in the future. So thank you, Ray. Speaking of cohorts after cohorts after cohorts, Ivory, I'm coming to you because I know we kicked off the year in the 2020-2021 club year with District 103, having the very first youth leadership program being done for the summer camp of Morton College. They knew then, back in July 2020, that they would be ready to do the program in July 2021. And they have already reached out and said, okay, are we still good? Because we're good on our end. How's District 103 on their end? Can we still do this program? Meaning they have been doing cohort now into another cohort. Plus, we just finished last month with Midwest College Project, who midway in their program decided they were going to do a second cohort, and that second cohort will start in May. So when Ray started talking about cohort after cohort after cohort with these different sponsoring groups, you are actually seeing that happen, Ivory, in your year as Youth Leadership Program Chair. Therefore, can you give everyone an idea, Ivory, of the type of programs that have been sponsored this year, so that way they can have other examples besides what Peggy and Ray gave?
Yeah, well, one that they're going to do it again with us is the Alpha fraternity. That's a group of men that work in the community that help young boys mentor young boys. And they called me during the holidays, says, Ivory, I'm looking for something. I remember Reggie calling me, Ivory, I'm looking for something. I'm in District 54, but they don't have anything. And I try to get a hold, but I saw your name on the website, and I would like to get something started the second week in January. I said, it is almost Christmas. That's a hard thing to do. He said, I know, but I want to get my kids something, some of these boys being able to communicate effectively. And I said, well, if you work with me, I'll work with you. And so of course, I reached out to Ray, Cassandra, and said, hey, what are we going to do? I want this to happen. And they wanted some male figures to do it, because these are all boys. And I know why, because being on the call with them, they were strict on those boys. Turn your camera on. Kids have a problem with turning their cameras on. So, and Cassandra, you know that, because we had that problem at Morton College. We had to but once they got used to having their cameras on, you may not remember this, but this one girl that sticks in my mind, she always had a problem. When she did her first speech on makeup, she made herself up and looked, I mean, I was like, oh my goodness, you look amazing. And you could never get her to turn her camera off after that. But the key is that if you're partnering with somebody and they see it working, the parents were seeing it work, the people that reached out to me seeing it work, they're going to come back. They're going to come back. And I want to slip this in there, Cassandra, is passion. Peggy said something about passion. What makes my passion different is I want them to see, I want to tell them about myself, where I come from, because they think that things are not easy to obtain. And I tell them constantly, say it out loud. Tell everybody what you want to do. Tell everybody, say, I want to be, whatever job you want, tell somebody about it. Because they're going to tell, didn't you say you're going to do this? You have to be able to speak up to get something.
Thanks, Ivory. I know you had so many different programs happening this year. Peggy, you will be so proud of District 103. I go back to the first year when I asked you, and we didn't get the program really going until about January. We were like 6 months into the end of the district year. And you're like, we really got to get more. We have to do more with this program. Well, here it is in Ivory's year. It seems like every single month is a revolving door of YLP programs that are happening. And with what you started, Peggy, with making sure people understood what the program was about, making certain we can train people, we can at least inform them, at a minimum, let's inform them. And that's what you started, Peggy. And I think Ray and Ivory has been able to build upon that. Yeah. Ray, I know you had a comment that you wanted to make. Go for it.
So thank you. Again, the youth leadership program is contagious. Once you get oriented and involved in it, it's contagious. And what I mean by that, for example, you have to deal with presentations and supports to assist you in delivering the messages and the programs at each of your 8 sessions. I was fortunate enough to have 2 or 3 individuals that joined my sessions. And one was Trina Odo from the Chicago Transit Authority, CTA. And do you know that I'm dealing with, maybe 10 or 12. She launches a program the summer of last year, 2020. I think we started off talking about as many as 150. And I said, let's do them all. And I think it may have narrowed down to maybe 25 or 30, somewhere thereabouts. But I'm saying this to say that once you get involved, all of a sudden you begin to think about other venues out here, other organizations that may very well be amenable to having a youth program dealing with the youth leadership program. It becomes kind of contagious, and you're looking for opportunities. And that's why I say youth leadership program for me is something that I carry in my hip pocket. And wherever I have an opportunity to talk about it to someone, then that's what I do. So thank you again, Cassandra.
You're welcome, Ray, and thank you. I love that comment about hip pocket, and you're absolutely right. Latrina Odo, who was participating in the MAPS Core program for you, she did launch in August of last year the CTA program, and her program, talk about creativity, everyone. You may remember when I said to you, the Toastmasters International website gives you a breakdown. It talks about there are 8 workshops and the students are under age 18 and blah, blah, blah. I told you some of those details. But let me tell you, Latrina and her team at CTA back in August of last year were able to take that content and they made the program not 1 to 2 hours. Their program ran from 9 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. As a matter of fact, if Latrina is on the line, and I thought I saw her, Latrina, if you don't mind, can you go ahead and give us some insight on how your program went in August of 2020?
Sure. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Hello, everyone. So last year, first I have to start off by saying thank you to Ray. Everything he said was absolutely correct about MAPS Core. That was an amazing group of students. Oh my God, Ivory, And we worked really hard with them, and that was very successful. Actually, I still keep in contact with one of the students. And I just want to say also, when we talk about passion, I have a passion also to work with young students, and just the discernment of working with the young ladies there and just encouraging them was just so rewarding to be able to have that opportunity to do that. And so up until this day, I can say that I still connect with some of the young ladies, checking on them, seeing what they're doing, giving them information about job opportunities, and also asking them to come back and help with the cohort that CTA launched on last year. So what CTA does every year is they hire interns. We have intern opportunities for paid internships for students, high school students, to come alongside and learn more about the CTA, as well as develop and grow in the business environment. And so what we normally do is we partner with an agency called One Summer Chicago. And this is through the city of Chicago. And basically this agency brings together government institutions and community-based organizations and companies to offer employment and internships to young adults, maybe ranging from the age of 14 to 24, depending on where they come from. So what CTA does is we hire high school students for the summer, 7-week program for sophomores. So sophomores through seniors. And so last year, the CTA Toastmasters Club was asked to launch or sponsor our training and development / HR department with a professional development day. So we were considered like one of the partners to come in and train the young adults on their leadership and communication skills. And so we did that. It was very rewarding. Thanks to Ray for helping. He was one of the facilitators that rolled up his sleeves, came in and supported me in that area. And Ivory as well with the information that he shared. And so we did have a team of Toastmasters, seasoned Toastmasters, that I was able to call and ask to volunteer to help us out. And so when Cassandra mentioned the 5 hours, the way that the program was set up is there were several vendors that supported CTA with the development of the youth. And they had what we call a professional day on Fridays. And so the students were surveyed when they came in about the professional day. They were asked what would they like, what would they be interested in. And so whether it was communication, leadership, technology, STEM classes, transportation, and so forth. So we had about 20 students that wanted to work with Toastmasters. And so those 20 students, we worked with them. But the reason why it was so long is that Cassandra mentioned earlier, the training or the sessions are 8 sessions, including the 8th session, which is the capstone, sort of say. We broke those sessions up because the students were only there with us for 7 weeks. We had 2 sessions in one day. And so the AM, we had for 2 hours, we would have session 1. They would take their lunch break and then come back on virtual on Zoom, and we would start our 2nd session. And so that's how we were able to complete the whole session and get all the students involved. And so this was a diverse group of students. Like everyone, all of our panelists has mentioned, they were shy. I would call Ivory, we can't get them to turn them cameras on. Oh my God, we can't see the gestures. What do I do? What do I do? But like he said, it was amazing. At the end, on the last presentation, everyone, the confidence level rose. We had table topics. We made them creative. We worked with the children at their level to get them engaged and involved, whether or not they had distractions in their homes or whether they just did not turn on their cameras. But I will say the one thing that they really enjoyed, Ray, and you can attest, is the chairmanship. They love being a leader. And so we did some work, but it was amazing. I encourage you guys, if you have that passion for young people and to mentor and coach them, this is for you. And it is so rewarding to see their development and how the trust level came. And at the end, they like, we want more. So bring it home. We are starting a cohort again this June the 28th up until August the 13th. And these are totally new students. We do have a few that are returning, but the word is out. Take the Toastmasters training for professional development because it works and it helps. So thank you for this opportunity. And again, we will be launching another session for the students, the new incoming interns.
Awesome. Look at that.
Cassandra, and
Yeah, go ahead, Ray. Go ahead.
it's the power of the gavel. That's why they like the chairmanship. It's the power of the gavel.
The power
And I
of
want-
the gavel. Go ahead, Ivory.
And I want to say this, we have a small window of opportunity. And with this opportunity, we have to bring these kids in because Zoom is not easy to work with, but we have an opportunity to get these kids in their homes because they were stuck in their homes. So I made sure that whatever somebody come to me, they wanted to do a project, do it because this is the opportunity. And with the school system now, this is a great opportunity because they're willing to do it.
Great point, Ivory, about everything being virtual. And I like when Latrina mentioned, although their program may have been 5 hours, everything was still virtual. Last summer, we started with everything being virtual. I think Ray's year and Peggy's year, well, I know for sure both of their years, everything was face-to-face, yet Ray's year was the last year where everything was face-to-face with the youth, which meant you, Ivory, had to quickly find a way to pivot and do the youth leadership program virtually because we started to have these requests coming out the woodworks, if you will. People were interested, seeking out District 103, wanting to have the assistance with doing this program, and they wanted it to be done virtually. Could we do it? And we were able to say yes. And we've done July, August, October, January, February, and March, at least 6 different programs this year, all virtual. So it's definitely doable. Awesome.
But it started with you. It started with you because I told you I didn't know anything how to do this, how this program going to work. We're reaching out to everybody. And you said, hold up, Bill, let me think through this. And you say, well, we can do it this way because it was very difficult because we had to get the information and make sure the kids get the information, but you worked it out.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that compliment, Ivory. Yeah, it definitely was something that initially I thought perhaps Toastmasters International would have been able to provide us with virtual resources. And unfortunately, they just have not been able to get that far yet. I was able to take what we had as far as the resources were concerned and figure out how to do it, especially for Morton College, because that was the one that was coming up so fast. That helped to set the foundation for what we were able to do. And with our group, and I'm just thinking back to the January group with the alphas, and then the March group with, or the February group with the Alpha with Midwest College Project. I know the Alphas and Midwest College Project kind of overlapped with each other, yet they were able to use that online virtual content that I was able to create for us as that foundation. And one day when Toastmasters International catches up with District 103, we'll just simply blend what they got with what we have. Yet we were able to keep the show going. So thank you for that. Speaking of keep the show going, let me ask, what questions do you all have? I know the show has been moving, it's been going. There have been comments inside of the chat box. However, I don't see any questions in particular. Therefore, I'm touching bases with everyone now. Are there any questions that you've been holding in your hip pocket that you've been wanting to ask any of the panelists? Feel free to either type your comment inside of the chat box or you can unmute and you can speak. Dr. T, I see that you've unmuted.
Yes. I have several questions.
Please limit it to one first.
Yes, well, I will because I want an answer. The first question that I have is this. After the first 8-week session, and say we start a second cohort, are the old members invited to come back? Because that would be interesting to enlarge upon what you're building. Are they allowed to come back for the next session?
I am going to allow the panelists to add some addition to that. My initial response, though, Dr. T, is I think it's going to depend upon the sponsoring organization, because most of them so far, what we've been seeing is that they are bringing in a new cohort with a completely different set of groups or students. And what you may have also noticed that Latrina said was they specifically invited the students from last year's program to be a part of this year's program. So I think it really depends. Ivory, go ahead and finish answering.
I would say it depends on the program, just like you said, because I'm looking at some of the places we went to, and they got a whole bunch of kids. It's not just the 25 kids that took the program, especially Midwest. What was that?
Midwest College Project.
Midwest College. They gave us a whole list of a whole new names because a lot of these are seniors getting ready to graduate. So they want to give everybody a chance. It's more than just those group of people in that program. It's a lot more. And MAPS Corps is the same. You know, they want to give everybody a chance. And probably the kids that we coached last year, Ray, they're probably gone. They graduated by now. So.
Well, my statement meant was this, because I'm dealing with education as well. From the school point of view, especially if you're getting them in the freshman year, et cetera, in terms of building up the numbers. And I also work with being an adjunct professor at St. Xavier University. My thing would be, now that I've heard what you said, it's up to the organization. I would like to envision starting a big organization where you start small with the 15, 20 and add on each year, and you might have 8, 9, 10 that stay in a short period of time. You might have 40 people, 50. And I do know this, kids learn best from each other. After we give them the instruction, et cetera, the kids tend to emulate and learn best from each other. So I just feel that I would get some organizations that would be willing to expand beyond. And the one good thing about it is, if they stay a couple of years even, what they learn, they won't tend to forget. That's one problem with our youth. And
hey,
this
Dr.
is why.
T, you know, that's
Sure,
an interesting,
sorry.
no, Dr. T, that's an interesting point that you're bringing up, though. Yet what you're describing is not youth leadership, because youth leadership is pretty much, I don't want to call it one and done. Yet in comparison to the interpersonal communication program that Toastmasters International offers the youth groups versus the youth leadership program itself, youth leadership program is, once it's over after the 8 weeks, you pretty much are done with that. Interpersonal communication program could be ongoing and continuously building upon it. So I would encourage you to go out to the youth leadership program page. And as a matter of fact, let me drop that link inside of the chat box for you now. And that way you can take a look at the details of that program, which is also designed for youth groups, yet it is designed to be more ongoing. And I think it allows you to do exactly what you're referring to, and that is build upon it.
Well, that leads to my second question.
Okay.
How are you able to, and how do you know if you've been successful beyond that 8 weeks in terms of keeping up with those students who were in the cohort the next year, or, you know, thereafter, months thereafter, to see if they're continuing on the right path? How are you able to keep up with that, documented, or, you know, keep in contact? What's the program that you have for that?
But
Or do you have one?
our goal is to give them the tools. Our goal is not to follow them down the path. We give them the tools and then we send them off. Now, you'd be surprised how kids take in stuff. I was listening to some of these kids speeches and their table topic, and they were saying things that their parent, old timey sayings. And I was like, how are they saying this? Because they're not old enough. They're listening to their parents, and they're listening. And one day when they need what we've taught them, it's going to pop out, because that has happened to me many a times, because some of my teachers or whoever said something, and then I'll be thinking about something and it'll pop out. And I said, that's the answer. It's because you may not think that they're learning, but they are.
Ray, go ahead. I think you had a comment that you were going to make as well.
Yes, thank you. Back to Dr. T's question. What the Youth Leadership Program has is a pre and a post test. Just a simple, quick and dirty way of saying, how are you with public speaking now? And then at the end of the 8 sessions, you have a post test to give them an opportunity to answer maybe 10 questions. And generally the response is going to be based on what you've seen. You can see a marked improvement, but then their responses to the questionnaire is going to be a very positive in terms of what they've learned, how they feel, and the confidence that they've been able to build. So it's an 8 session, whether it's 8 weeks or a month or 2 weeks. I know that it works. And just like anything else, post the youth leadership 8 sessions, and I encourage the youth, if you don't use what you've learned, it's just like anything else. If you don't use it, you will lose it. So I encourage them to continue seeking opportunities to be able to do public speaking, to be able to then take on and experience leadership roles.
Great. Thank you both for answering that question for Dr. T. Peggy, I wanted to double check. Were there any additional thoughts that you had regarding that question Dr. T had? I think you're on mute, Peggy. You're on mute.
I think Ivory and Ray answered the question.
Great. Thank you for that. And speaking of the questions, I know as Dr. T was asking his 2 different questions, Nakia, you put a question inside of the chat box. You are pretty much correct on that. I like when you said, it sounds like the YLP is pretty much a speech craft, but for young people. Absolutely. That's a fantastic comparison, Nakia. So you're right. It would be 8 weeks. They're learning the same type of information, just simply for the young people. Good. Also, inside of the chat box, I saw a question that came in from Jack. And Jack is asking the question, panelists, how do we use the YLP committee to tap into Toastmaster resources on the district level? How do we use the YLP committee to tap into Toastmaster resources on the district level? Any one of you want to answer that for Jack? How do we use the YLP committee to tap into Toastmaster resources on the district level?
Since I'm at the district level, it's quite simple. You reach out. You always have to reach out. If you don't, talk to your district director. Who's the youth leadership chair this year? Reach, and he'll give you that information. Once you reach out, I will sit down and talk with you and come up with a plan. And then we come up with a plan. You give me the kids, I'll get you the manuals. We'll give you everything you need, and then we'll look for people to help you. If you're a Toastmaster, you should be able to do it yourself, but with this new way we do business, we ask that you team up with somebody, because you can't be Zoom master and teach the class at the same time. Look in the room, see who's in the room, call and roll, check it. it's a lot. So it takes a tag team, and I jump in there every now and then, and I'll do table topics, or I will evaluate the kids. But like I said, you can't do it by yourself, and I will give you the resources you need.
Awesome. Ray, did you have something you wanted to add into that statement?
Well, I think Ivory pretty much covered it, and that is to emphasize again, you should not consider taking this on alone. Had it not been for Ivory, Trina, and Julian, and Deshaun, I don't know what I would have done. It would have been a madhouse for me. But again, in terms of resource, and that, as Ivory was saying, I think once you sit down and begin, because this is an evolving process within the district, within the using youth leadership program, we're talking about, to some extent, untested waters in terms of the potential growth for this as a resource, and a resource not only at the district level, but more significantly at Toastmasters international level. They've given us a tool. And right now, I think because of the flexibility that we have to be able to take it in one way versus another way is a great asset, the flexibility. Because if you look at the role and the responsibility and the book, the coordinator's manual and the workbook, it prescribes, without being statutory, a certain process. But once you get into it, you will realize that, wait a minute, wait a minute, you're going to need more than just that. So if you have ideas, I think it would be great to be able to sit down, discuss those ideas, put everything on the table to figure out what fits well for your circumstance, and then try it out. The flexibility is there to do just that. Thank you, Cassandra.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
Cassandra,
Right? Yeah, go for it.
I want to add this. Come up with an idea. For instance, I was sitting here and some of the young people at my job said, "Hey, Ivory, I want to mentor some young kids. Can you come up with an idea to help us?" And this is all the developers. These are young people right out of college, and they want to do something in the community. And so I was thinking, I said, wait a minute, don't we have a program at work called STEM? And then I started thinking about, let's do some robotic stuff, teach the kids how can I, see, I'm always trying to weave stuff in there. I was like, how can I incorporate Toastmasters in this and get the funding for my company to do this? And so I thought, let's do STEM. Let's do STEM. STEAM. And that's adding the arts in it. So I'm working on that program and I'm trying to figure it out. And I got all these people that are good at science and math and technology, but I need some Toastmasters that know how to draw or something like that, some kind of art in it. And that's what I'm going to be looking for the next month or so. And these are projects that just popped up last week. There's always going to be a project that's going to pop up. And if I can get the city of Chicago, all the schools, and I don't want the privileged kids. I want the kids that are in the community that don't know anything about art or science, don't know you get a kid playing with a robot car and program that car to work. Don't you think he's going to remember to do that? And he's going to be excited about that. And it's going to become a passion. And once he learns how to do something, communicate, and then talk about it. Don't you think that's going to change his life? Of course it's going to change his life. And that's my plan.
Sounds like a nice plan. And I know when you started saying, if you can get every school in the city of Chicago, I started thinking, man, we're going to need a whole bunch of Toastmasters to help with that.
That's right. That's right.
Speaking of having Toastmasters help with it, Ivory, I know we're in about the final 10 minutes of our session. I'm curious to know, are there any upcoming youth leadership program opportunities that are in need of coordinators, where our members can potentially serve as the coordinator to receive that leadership credit or that credit toward their DTM or whatever the case is? Yet I'm asking, Are there any upcoming youth leadership program opportunities that you can share
Yes.
with our audience?
Yes. Well, we have one coming. Well, I already booked the one for Midwest College. I already got 2 people there. Uh, the Alphas want to do another one, but they want to do a community one with the AKAs. So that's a community one with both boys and girls. So if we can get that going and get that working for the summer. Also, Morgan College, did I say Morgan College was already, I mean, I need some people for that, and I don't know how many. And I know Latrina have have one coming up also. And I got a small project with JA, that's job where it's like bring your parents to school and talk about what you do. And I think that's a perfect project for Toastmasters to come in and tell them what they do and have the kids ask questions about career. It's like a career day, but with Toastmasters. I'm working on that.
Wow. So let me see. We have coming up in May, Midwest College Project. That one needs coordinators, or you already have that one booked?
That one's already booked.
That one's already booked. Then we will have coming up in July 2021, Morton College. You do need coordinators for that. We need 2 coordinators for that one, right?
Yes, yes.
And those coordinators would need to go through a background check. Therefore, if you're interested, we will want you to tell us now so we can get you going with the background check. Otherwise, Morton College is not going to let any Toastmaster facilitate a program for their youth without you going through a background check. And that's something that we also find occasionally our Toastmaster members will need to go through a background check depending upon the organization. So again, let me backtrack. May, we have Midwest College Project that's already filled. July 2021, we have Morton College. We need 2 coordinators. In August, we have Latrina and the CTA Toastmasters doing their program again, and Latrina will let us know, or Latrina will let us know either way, whether she's the coordinator for that or will work with the coordinator for that and how many coordinators they need for that.
Yes, I will let you guys know. Thank you, Cassandra. We're working on it now.
Okay.
If there's any artists, Toastmasters that could teach kids how to do something creative with art, I would want to talk to you.
Okay. And Ivory, for the art, so I know Latrina's is in August. She's working on those details now. She will let us know how many people they need. When is your program, Ivory, for STEAM, where you need the Toastmasters with the artistic side that will be a part of that program?
I'm hoping June.
Okay.
And it's going to be an 8-week program, and they're going to learn how to program and do some art. It depends on, I haven't even designed it yet. It's just in the back of my head. I got the team together.
But let me ask this question for the sake of clarity. Is STEAM including the youth leadership, or STEAM is something different?
It's going to include the youth leadership.
Okay, so it will. And that'll be in June.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be like a camp. It's going to be like, you're going to do this on Monday, you're going to do this on Tuesday, and do this on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, an hour.
Okay, gotcha.
So the Toastmaster will be on Wednesday.
And look at that, everyone. We've already talked about 4 different months: May, June, July, August. We already have youth leadership programs going. So District 103 has truly been busy this year. Something I also want to point out to you, if in case you didn't pick this up, Ivory mentioned that when the Alpha group did their program in January, February. Actually, I think they started in February, didn't they, Ivory? So they
started the last week of January.
And they ended like that second week of March.
Right.
Yet the member of their organization belonged to a completely different district. District 103, everyone, is receiving compliments from members in other districts because of the type of programming that we're offering to our members, our leaders, both at the club and district level. Therefore, I do understand when Ivory mentioned District 54 had a member who needed a youth leadership program that wasn't being offered. And when that member started searching, he found District 103. And not only did District 103 have a program, we could do it virtually. We were also able to provide a qualified a passionate coordinator for the program. Therefore, if you are interested in being a coordinator for any of the programs that I've mentioned, as I said, May, June, July, and August. And I know that Latrina says their program is going to be Thursdays only. It's running from June 28th through August 13th. So the CTA YLP will start on June 28th and run until August 13th. So we want you to be committed for the entire length of time that the program runs. I know Morton College is only 2 weeks, a Tuesday and Thursday, a Tuesday and Thursday, and then it's over. But we need you to be committed for the length of time that the program will run. If you have any thoughts, any comments, or any questions about any of those programs, feel free to unmute and speak those now, type them inside of the chat box. Otherwise, I'm going to close out with my final questions to the panelists. So Peggy, let me start with you. As we are closing out in our final 3 minutes here, what best practices would you give to anyone who will take on serving as a coordinator for a youth leadership program? What words of advice would you give them?
Well, as I stated in the beginning, one must have a passion for working with young people and be excited about what you're doing, because your excitement spills over. They can feel it and they know it. So passion and excitement and enthusiasm, all those positive attributes is what I would recommend.
Oh, thank you. That high energy being brought in. Ray, how about you? What best practices, what words of advice would you share?
I would advise anyone interested to take a look at each of the 8 sessions, what they call for on the agenda, and begin to develop your supplemental material and information, your handouts, and who you're going to call upon to give presentations for each of those sessions. If you can develop that at the outset, I think you will be somewhat ahead of the game. Now, you never know what's going to happen once the sessions begin to roll, but taking a look at your workbook, the agendas that's in each of the 8 sessions, develop your agenda fully with your handouts, with your people that you're going to use as resources. And I think things will be a little bit lighter for you.
Thank you, Ray. That's great advice. And you know, you brought up a key point that we have observed in District 103 this year, and that is we have members who are interested in participating. They can't serve though as coordinators. Therefore, they would serve as guest speakers. For some of that content that you were talking about, Ray, that is included in the workbook, those members would come in and be the facilitator or the guest speaker for that content. They would participate in that moment only, even though they can't run the full program. So that's good that you said that. And it will help coordinators to know, okay, I got these 8 weeks. These are the content. These are the people who would be interested in being a guest speaker. Now I know who can help me to facilitate this information. So great advice. How about you, Ivory? What advice, words of wisdom, best practices would you give to someone wanting to be a coordinator?
Well, if you're nervous about it, forget about it. You know what organization you're a part of. We're here to catch you. You got all these people that there. If something goes wrong, we're gonna jump in and help you out. And this is your opportunity to help the community. The world is spinning out of control. And don't you think these kids are spinning out also in their heads because they're thinking about all kind of stuff? Let's be the voice there to say, hey, tell us what's on your mind. Tell us what you're thinking. And boy, do they tell us what they're thinking. and just this is your opportunity to do something to help Chicago, to help these kids. Because I'm gonna tell you, if they're not explaining themselves, they're gonna end up you know where. And I tell the kids, don't let somebody write your narrative.
Well, with that being said, everyone, I want to thank you, especially those of you that are placed inside of the chat box that you are interested in serving as a youth leadership coordinator. I recognize this was the 3rd or the 4th time in this 3-4 month period that we've been talking about youth leadership. We've been making the attempt to make certain we position ourselves to have our coordinators. Therefore, Nakia, thank you for reaching out and letting us know that we can add you to the list of coordinators. And I also want to thank everyone who attended today's session. Thank you so much for allowing us to share with you more insight about the Youth Leadership Program, as well as the opportunity to serve as a coordinator. This time, though, you heard about the experience from those who have been appointed as the Youth Leadership Program Chair for District 103. I have to commend Peggy White, Ray Willis, and Ivory Gwynn for allowing District 103 to actually tap into their hearts, their passion, their experiences for wanting to work with the youth and providing this program to our district and to our community, as well as for our members. So everyone, we thank you so much for being here. I say stick around, or not stick around, but stay tuned for the next session, because there will be one coming up next month. It'll be another leadership topic, this time though focused on club leadership roles. So everyone, take care. You have a great rest of your day. And until next time, be blessed and stay safe. Thank you, panelists. Thank you so much, Ray, Peggy, Ivory.